right, so another year, another Micwise album. Let's
Right?
talk about his newest record, Persona Non Grata. Now, just giving you all disclaimer, right? This is gonna be a different review, man. Because this is a different album. This is not one that I expected from Micwise, but then at the same time, it is the kind of stuff that he would put out anyway, right? And that's one thing that I always admire about his work, right? Like he will just like every project would be something different. You wouldn't know it, right? Because it's an artist. It's just him doing his thing, and he will usually work with the same producers or whatnot, right? But this one is something totally different, and for me, this was a challenge for me to not listen but to decipher, right? Because there's things that's going on in this record that I didn't see coming, but it happens here, right? And it's so interesting that this comes right after what I would have said was his most challenging record to date. That would be Family Tradition, right? Where he gets very deep, dark, and personal with his past, and that's the stuff that pretty much influences his work, right? That's all the dark stuff in the world and his life that influences his work, right? But this one here was I can't say it's darker than Family Tradition, but it's just as dark, right? But for a similar yet I would say for similar yet different reasons, right?
Right.
But as far as the disclaimer goes, right? So I just had to give this out there before I ask you, Ricardo, just your general thoughts on the record, right? Because you actually listened to this before me, right? What always makes Mike Wise's music so enjoyable as far as just me listening to his music, right? Is kind of going in not knowing what to expect, right? And out of it you realize that this is not some random, collection of tracks. There's something that's going on. There's some theme or some message that's going on, right? And for me, right, as somebody who has been like reviewing music, let me just say reviewing it as a side hustle, but now kind of turned into a job, right? Um, the fear that I have when it comes to certain people's music is that I usually have to go into these records without any context, without any idea of what the album is about, right? I might just get like, let me just say like a brief synopsis in terms of what the album is about or when it was produced or what the mindset was, all that kind of stuff. But I now have to dig in deeper and try to understand what the artist is saying. So I had to try to get into the artist's head and try to understand, oh, this is what you're trying to say and this is what you're doing here, right? So when it comes to Micwise, let me put it like this, right? There's no genius page that I could go to and I could be like,
Right.
oh, that's what the album is about, right? Or there's no tweets that I could go to and where Michael say, oh, this is the inspiration behind this track, right? Whatever it is. So there's no verified video, that will explain to me what is being said on a certain track, right? So now I now have to sit down and really, really take in everything that's being said here, right? So I'm saying all this now, right? Because I feel like there are a few things that either I may misinterpret or maybe there's stuff that still needs to reveal itself or themselves to me, right? Certain points, if you will, right? But to me, that kind of adds to the joy and the challenge of listening to music in general, right? And in particular, like Mike Wise's stuff. Not saying that what he does is like revolutionary, wherever it is, right? But that is kind of like the great thing about music that it could mean one thing to somebody, but it could mean something else to somebody else, right? But the fear that I have personally is that I could just misinterpret this thing altogether, a song or album altogether, and I may think that it is about this. Maybe it's because I am channeling my own beliefs into this record when I have to kind of set that aside and be like, oh, this is the artist's perspective, not mine, and I have to try to connect with what it is that person's saying, right? So it's that kind of back and forth when it comes to listening to music in general, right? And that I would say that kind of adds the longevity of music as well, right? As we get older, as we listen to the music more, and as we live life even more, certain things that you might pick up on before might have a different connotation or a different meaning as you get older, right? And I feel like this is, as a wrap up preamble here, right? I feel like this is just part of what Mike is doing here on this record here, right? He is kind of playing with listeners' expectations of what they expect of him when it comes to his music, when it comes to an album, right? But he's also doing something a little bit different, something a little bit challenging, something a little bit provocative, if you will, right? And I'll get to this in the review. At the end of the day, the matter is, well, or I should say, the question that will be asked now is, all right, once I fully understand what's being done here, what's being said here, will I enjoy this music? Will I love this music? Or will I just be like, that's not for me? Or, nah, I don't want to touch that because this thing forces me to think too much, or it's too complex for me, or I don't like how dark it is and how it makes me feel. No, this not for me, right? That is what I feel this particular album is exploring here, right? But I'll get to that later on, right? So, Ricardo, general thoughts on Persona Non Grata, and then I will just jump into my thoughts. Just, I'll get track by track, I'll just mention, what I wrote down for each track or whatnot, right? But I just want to hear your general thoughts on this record here, just from what you heard.
Yeah, yeah. I only give it like a couple of lessons. So it's not nothing to. I can't really pull anything super deep, anything from it. Like okay, I get you talking about this or that. Usually the political track and whatnot. But then you'll have a track that I'll really enjoy. And then yeah, a couple of the features are pretty good as well. I enjoy. I enjoy this one. This is a pretty in and out for me. Track with it, but I don't know. It was like as I didn't get the vibe from it at least that was as serious as like the last album. The last album had a tone to it that was much more serious. So this not so much. But I dug it for what it was. And this one just had me. It have a couple of moments. I'll just get to it in terms of just a great line or lyrical thing. And I'll talk about that when we get to the track or two. You'll see. So yes, this is that. Yeah, solid outing in my opinion for it. I'll take it.
Right, right, right. So just to jump into the album here, right? So, because I am not versed in all things Latin or all things law, I had to look up and find out what persona non grata means, and basically in a nutshell, it just means an
Right,
unacceptable or unwelcome person, right? And
right,
that
right.
was like the first hint of, oh, this is what the album is about, or this is what he's trying to do
Yeah,
here.
yeah, you're cutting a personality like usually by a community or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so we have the opening track, Cold Wind, which is produced by Sad CG, right? So I think like the quote that opens this song and album is very, very important. 'Cause this kind of sets up the vibe of the album itself, right? So again, I had to do some searching to find the quote, right? I actually found the video, you know what I mean? So it's a quote from a soul slash jazz singer and poet by the name of Labi Sifri, right? He's a British guy, right? I have to read it out because it matters in terms of what this album is doing here, right? So he says, but just to hear the music completely devoid of anything and evaluate the music on its merits. I don't believe in giving the audience what they want anyway. I believe in giving the audience my best and making them like it. You don't make hit records that way, but you could sleep at night. I think that is the perfect setup for what this album is,
Right.
right? Because I want to make it clear here, right? Like Mike, like many great rap artists and artists in general, not just gonna throw a sample just for the sake of it. It's not just there to, just for the sake of it. There's a point to it, there's a meaning to it, right? So yeah, for me now, just to add a little bit more context into it, right? So I actually like wrote down what the guy said before that quote, right? Because it's sort of like halfway into the full quote, right? So he starts off by saying, I would like the audience not to know who I was and not to see me in completely all forms of music. In fact, not to know the artist, not to see the artist, not to know who wrote the song or the piece. And then it continues on to that piece of the quote that opens this track here, right? I think all that matters in terms of what really going on, right? But anyway, so about this track here, right? So for me, right, the first red flag for me in terms of what this album was going to be about came in the form of its first single, Culture Part 3, right? Which I will get into in a bit, right? But yeah, when I listened to it, right? So again, I am not genius, I am not verified, so I had to give this multiple listens to get the point of it, right? So Mike does this thing, right, where on certain songs he will throw what sounds like a tag, right? Where he says clinic, right? I just did like, all right, why would he say clinic on these songs, right? You know what I mean? And Like, if you look up the word clinic, it's like, it's not like, the building, but, more like a study, like a case study,
Right.
however it is, on a person, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly.
right, so every time he says clinic, it's always like he's talking about something or someone, right? So, opening lines are as follows. Been the illest for 10th Street, but I ain't coughing heavy, just getting rid of the dead weight. To silence I, they go to lengths with red tape. Never made it off spins, so every performance I let break. So how I interpret this song here, right? Because this is just a short roughly 2 minute song here, right? He's kind of mirroring his own rap career. Like, let me just say 10 years of his rap career, right? He's mirroring it to the recent PNM government that ran
Okay.
the country for 10 years.
Right.
So what he's basically doing, he's kind of covering that era, right? That whole era. Not really covering it in terms of what the PNM did and what the government did, basically, right? But he's kind of channeling their power, like their time when they ran the country, right? And he's relating it to his own career and the stuff that he went through. So the stuff that he was aspiring towards and how that plays out for him, which I'll get into later, right? So again, I could be wrong here, but that's how I interpret it, right? So yeah, just over this very dramatic, string assisted, very soulful beat, he's just kind of he's basically rapping. He's kind of talking from the perspective of a rapper. Someone who has been on the grind for so long, right? Talking about how his words can influence people, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's kind of like a politician, right? How
Right.
they kind of coerce you to to vote for them and all that kind of stuff, right? But then most importantly, after elections and when you smoke clear now, you realize, oh, the promises that you were expecting, you don't get those, right? Or the things that you do get, you don't really play out the way you wanted to, right? So to kind of get generally in terms of what I interpret from this album, he's kind of mirroring their government, or at least when they ran the country, if you will, to his own career, right? What he promised himself, what he kind of promised other people in terms of his music, in terms of what he was trying to do now, in terms of just becoming one of the greats, right? And then sort of looking back in a sort of a self-aware manner, like, did I really make it? Did I really achieve everything that I wanted to achieve, right? But at the same time, going back to family tradition and his recent work, right? It's like, these things, all these bad things that was going on in the country, all these broken promises and all these kind of things, those are the things that fuel my music as well, right? So he's kind of covering all of these things now, throughout the course of this album. And that's it's a very tricky thing that he did here, very, very deceptive here, right? But I think for the most part it works, right? But that's why I feel like these tracks run at a certain way, right? Why the tone of the album is very dark, why he's very dense when it comes to the wordplay, right? So it sort of the album kind of requires that you have to listen to these tracks over and over and over to kind of pick up on certain things, right? And even when you think you pick up certain things, there's still other stuff that is there that you still haven't even discovered, right? So that's very skillful, though. That's very tricky of a act to pull, right? But yeah, I think that this track kind of sums that up very well in terms of what it is he doing here, right? So yeah, next track we have is Bly, right? Which technically is his second single because he did
Right.
this sort of like what it was the name of the people on the mount, right? So he just basically did his
Right. Right.
verse,
Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of
Right.
done
I
in a
remember
sort
this.
of like a verse, sorry, like a colors kind of style, you know what I mean? But it's
Right. I kind of
always
spoken with some.
right,
A little bit.
exactly, yeah, and that's the style of it, But it's his verse, so Link's the Indigo Child who does the second verse, right? His verse is there, right? But yeah, this is just a banger from start to end, though. I love the beat. It's just a straight up bar fest, and it's just fire, though, just from both artists, in my opinion, right? And I really dug Angelo Imani's beat for this. Very synth heavy, though, especially when it comes to the hook. I really dug that, right? But yeah, it's just basically two MCs, just showing why they have what it takes to be regarded as two of the best, right? And going back to what I said before, right? So this is just a straightforward track, right? So I should mention there are the straightforward tracks where it's Mike more or less rapping about himself, right? But yeah, ever so often he will drop a track where he's not rapping about himself, right? Even though it's under the guise of him. It's meant to. It's on surface level. It sounds like he's rapping about himself, but actually he's rapping about somebody else there. But it's within the guise of being the best rapper and all that kind of stuff, right? So up next we have Culture Part 3, which is the
Right.
second clinic song, right? And
Right.
yeah, the moment I heard that song, I was like, oh, that's the vibe we're going for. Because yeah, if you hear that hook, like boy, dude did not care at all. This is one of the few times that I ever hear Mike drop MC, the curse word MC that I'm not gonna say here, because I don't want to get, quote unquote demonetized. But yeah, I is very rarely do I hear he drop that line, that word though in a song, eh? And boy,
Yeah.
the hook is so ridiculously cynical, eh? But it works, eh? Even right down to him saying, even Sat Maraj looking up like, what the fuck? Here was here, Sat Maraj
Yeah.
looking up, up,
Yeah.
eh? Like what the
Yeah.
fuck?
No.
And for those
Yeah.
who don't know who he is, who are outside of Trinidad and Tobago,
Right.
Sat
That's somewhat
Maraj
incendiary.
is no
Yeah.
longer
Incendiary.
he is in spiritual essence, right? He is dead, right? So yeah, put two
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
two
He passed
together,
away.
right?
He's
Yeah,
a
right.
very incendiary political figure, in throughout his life.
That's it, right? And I will confess, even though I am not versed in all things local politics, like I just kind of stay away from these things, but I had to be familiar with it enough, especially when it come to election time, because I live in Trinidad, right? And you had to kind of know what's going on in the country and why, right? But yeah, this is Mike just taking basically like this summary of everything that went down with the recent
Right.
elections and just
Right.
tearing it apart, ripping it apart, right? He calling out
Right.
PNM, he called out UNC, he called out everybody on the bullshit, right? The beats actually kind of reminds me of this track Feel the Pain from Family Tradition with the
Right.
soulful
Right.
chop and just how the vocal is just there throughout the entirety of the song, right? But yeah, and also bad points to Profess though, and just that creative video that they do here, right?
Right.
'Cause, yeah, I mean, who hasn't like at some point in time sat on the couch, watch local
Yeah.
TV, and just be like, "What the fuck is this?" And just changing stations, right?
Right.
Who hasn't done that, right? Who hasn't done that? Like I can imagine people who are just watching, rallies, right? PNM and UNC rallies, probably doing that same shit. Like, what the fuck this man say? And just changing stations, right? So bad points on that video, right? But yeah, as a wrap up here, right? Because I want to hear your thoughts on this track here, right? Yeah, this kind of feels like a political version of a carnival wrap up song, like what Chromatics would do. But you see, a carnival wrap up
Right.
is very cynical as well, right? But this one is dark though, like very very dark and very cynical, right? And lastly, I had to say though, I fucks with that outro, with that what the what the what the what the
Right.
fuck? It's something about that. It's always having me cracking up though every time I hear that though, because again, this song just oozes in cynicism. I just have mad respect for somebody, especially a Trinidad, to just say, yeah, this whole election was bullshit. I gotta tell you
Right.
why. Everything that led up to it was all bullshit, nothing solved.
Right.
And months after the fact, nothing still is solved. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like right now, Kamala talking about, oh, we're gonna put out, we're gonna have 20,000 jobs, blah blah. Right? I just hear that, I just roll my eyes. I was like, oh, you're serious? Like you really want me to work in the Ministry of Health, like with my passes? Like, come on, man. Like you're serious? You know what I mean? But yeah, just for having the balls to just call both parties out of this shit, I applaud. Round of applause, right? But yeah, your thoughts on Culture Patry.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the usual, like these solid and very usually very funny political track. You'll hit here, you'll make fun of all the things. And I feel like, to be fair, I haven't been following like politics, for a hot minute now. So like, well, local politics at least. And it's like, oh yeah, right. Who is this? And oh yeah, right. Yeah, I remember seeing this cross thing. Because the only reason I was keep up with local politics is because I have one TikToker that's kind of follow. And he just like kind of keep up with it. There's I don't know if you know the man named Rambles TV. Rambles, that dude.
Is he
He's
an Indian fella who
I don't know. I don't know
okay,
if he's
can,
Irish.
can I know there's an Indian guy
I think
who
he's. I think
usually
he's.
like does these social commentary vids on TikTok?
Okay,
Yeah.
right. No, I keep. I think I know. I think it's our. Yeah, and I think he's a black fella. I think so. Because it have a guy who does do economic stuff mostly. That's an Indian fella. But I don't think he's a trainee. To be fair, or he probably live in Canada, or whatever. But again, I have not like directly kept up with this stuff. It's more like just by proxy. People make a meme or a joke about something and like, okay, let me why this joke funny? You look it up and like, oh, okay, that's why that's funny. All right, that kind of funny. So it's just that, right? But yeah, great run through track, really, really funny. Again, yeah, the Satmara track, yeah, that's what we call don't give a fuck, as the kids say. That's like just not giving up business. Like, well, what are they gonna do? Not play on the radio? Like, what are they gonna do? Like, he can't do nothing. Um, yeah, it's just him just dragging the usual suspects and making it work. Right, is up there with all of his great political tracks and social commentary tracks.
Right, right, right. Now, just going back to the whole, angle or approach to this record here, right? So I feel like for me, the whole political stuff isn't just there just because, right? We mentioned P&M and UNC, right? Two rivals. So one topic that I see being addressed here, and you see it sort of resonate through the album too, is just that rivalry, right? Just that attitude of I had a goal. I go in for blood now when it comes to my rivals, right? So the next track, Said and Done, right, which features some great production by Devontae, right? One thing I love about this beat here is that it uses this choir vocal, right? But it sort of sustains it, right? So it's just like this vocal, but just holds it from start to end, right? And just done in such a way that it just feels like it's just this incredibly intense song that you hear there. And it's how Mike, channels that intensity, right? So I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if one of the things that inspired this record was that beef in quotes that he had last year with this guy Stunner. With
Yeah, that'd be flat. Yeah? Which who?
yeah, all
Yeah,
right.
I
So
can't remember.
yeah, so
Yeah, that remind me. I
okay,
don't
okay,
remember.
okay, okay. So forgive me, folks. I am from the east side, not from the south, so I don't know all the details, right? So ahem,
Okay,
ahem, ahem. There was a rapper called Stunner Park, right? A few years ago, I covered a mixtape that he put out called the Wise
right.
Tapes. It
Okay,
was where
this
he
this
rapped
this
over.
song is slightly familiar.
Right.
Yeah, this song slightly
Is where
familiar.
he rapped over beats that Micwise gave him, but like
Right,
there was a rivalry between the two of them. But yeah,
right.
there was some shit going on between him, well, Stunner and Mike and Profess. And Profess put
Okay.
out this song Delulu, which that
Right.
actually
Okay,
put
I
me
don't
on
remember.
to
Yeah,
the rivalry. I
right.
didn't even know that
I
it
don't remember. I
happened.
don't remember. I don't remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Stunner did this video poking fun at Profess, and Mike
Right,
Profess
right.
throw another shutout. And then Mike come with literal fire and brimstone. I don't know, like for the life of me, I was hoping that song, I forgot the name of it right now, would have show up on this album, but like I feel like he was going the Kendrick route where, alright, that was the
Right,
diss track. That diss track is just separate. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna put that on no album, but I'm still gonna address it one way or the other, right? And this track,
right,
Said
right.
and Done, feels like another response to that, right? Because yeah, it's just him going at his rivals. And this is something that pops up later on as well, too, right? But no lie though, the second verse on this is one of the best that I've heard in a song all year. Because throughout the song, this man pulling no punches, and this man taking shots at every, like just all of his enemies. You know what I mean? But I feel specifically he have his sights set. He targets set on Stunner Park. I would not be surprised if that's the case, right? But yeah, hands on one of the best tracks of this album. And it's just that beat though. How that beat just sort of maintains this sort of intensity from start to end. I love it. And last point about show out short, so shout out to Radisson here, right? When Mike says in the intro, ask Crash if I lie yet. I was like, is Radisson he talking about? Swear to God, though, when I hear you say that, I was like, wait, no, that's Radisson because his nickname was, say, his rap name, if it will, is Crash, though. It's like, I was
Right.
wondering if it was Radisson you shout out. If that's the case, then would. That's what I say, well, would, right? So up next we have Gospel, right? This is the next clinic song, right? And here we have Young Swisher because he comes through with this sort of well, basically like a gospel inspired kind of beat, right? It's very cinematic. I love how they use the vocal chops. It has a sort of a Just Blaze kind of vibe to it, especially how Just Blaze used to do, soulful vocals, right? You know what I mean? That's how he used to do that back in the days, right? But in true Micwise fashion, this isn't, like the title is very specific, right? Because again, just my speculation here, this is another character portrait. This is another person that he's touching on, right? So yeah, Mike again is talking about religion, right? So he is rapping from the perspective of who I assume is this pastor, right? A rich pastor who just making money from from his religious hustle, if you will, right? But instead of trying to use that money to improve his community, right? Improve the surroundings, try to help people out, right? And we'll get to that in the next track, right? Just the idea that there are people who still, for lack of a better term, catching the ass financially, right? He is using that to better himself, right? But as you
Right.
learn throughout this track, there's all these demons that he's trying to deal with, right? So the public eye, he trying to put up this front as if, oh, he tough and whatnot, and he not listening to the rumors and the bullshit, right? But how he's dealing with all that kind of stuff now is very, very, very insidious, right? So there's moments where like you hear about just things that sound very insidious, right? There's a couple of lines that really stood to me, a couple of moments that stood to me, right? So one way he says, "Still some days it be darkness. Putting my business in the streets got me tense. Wanted to flea markets that keep starving unique artists. The business fools, you're on hard drives. I store work and wish for closure. Closure, store, hard drives. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
man, right? And then and throughout it, right? He keep that's the way how he frames these portraits, right? It's from the perspective of a rapper, right? So just to expound on it, as I said earlier, rap, politics, religion, it's all about the word, right? The spoken word, being able to impact and influence people with your words, right? But is the outcome of that, right? So like there's a line where he also says, so when I speak to bless the beats, I hope every air condition to feel me vent when I expel the heat. Fuck those who
Yeah.
nap on me, rest ain't a plan for me. I get the bags when I forget the sleep. You know what I mean? So it's got that kind
Yeah.
of stuff like, oh yeah, I'm a pastor here. I'm talking to the audience here. We are preaching here. We sleeping on me? Nah, I ain't gonna allow that, right? But then the last lines are very dark now. Where he says, "Them late nights wasn't worth it when I stress relieved. Money I blew ticks me off when the next morning when I read receipts. When I read receipts." It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So even though he's not explicitly saying what this character is doing, it's implied that, oh, he is doing some very, very, very unholy shit, right? It'll be behind the
Yeah.
scenes, right? When he could have been using money to help people out, right? So it's that kind of aspect that he go in with, right? But you get the idea that it's not just him taking shots at organized religion as he did before with family tradition and other records, right? But kind of saying, yeah, the society's still messed up. So even a man like him, who not even the worthiest of it all, still dealing with shit. He looking for ways to solve these problems, but he limited to what he have here. Does so he get what he get there. In other words, that's the vibe that I get from this, right? So now that we get into the second half of the album, right? So we have Get This, which features one of my favorite beats here. This is from a guy called Ingles. This is a jazzy mid-tempo beat, and it's
Okay.
one that, yeah, will get heads nodded from start to end. I really love this beat, right? This is pretty much like a hard time song. If you're familiar with the Run DMC song, it's like, yeah, hard times in this society, right? That's what it is, right? So,
Okay.
on the first verse, he rapping about, trying to stay paid with his rap career, but at the same time, he have the 9 to 5 to worry about. And, he's going back to that same rivalry aspect, right? So, in this case, he talk about, oh, it are people who want to fight me down because listen, I try to do something a little bit different. I want to be a great rapper in this country here, but people still fighting me down. Like, how hard it is, but they don't care, girl. They still fighting me down, right? So you get that vibe there, right? And then in the second verse, he does some storytelling as well, right? Because he talks like similar to like what he did on Heat 68 with the track Gabriella, right? So he talks about this one woman who trying to live
Yeah.
she life, but then there's this guy who could be involved in politics as all say with us anything, and he passed some anti-abortion bill and whatnot, and that kind of
Right.
affects things because she gets knocked up and she can't get rid of the child, so problems ensue and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's just how society kind of wears her down in the long term, right? That's the point of that second verse, right? So yeah, I really dug that track. Right, so four more tracks to go, right? So we have White Wings, which Young Swisher also produced here. Um, this one is not one of my favorites, but I dig the vibe
Right.
of it, right? I really dug the beat of it. I think the reason why I didn't dig it that much is because, admittedly, it takes a while for the song to pick up because the song is short, right? But I would say half the song, or let's just say close to a third of it, is just the build up, right? You hear like this song intro. I'm not sure who sung it. Maybe it's Young Swisher for all we know. But it just sort of builds up and builds up and builds up, right? We're just there kind of wondering, okay, when Mike is gonna come in, right? But then he just does this extended verse, right? And yeah, I mean what he does here is great, right? But what I picked up from it, right? Because there's a sample that opens the track where basically he's just taking that biblical verse of, yeah, when I was young, I did childish things, but you need to grow up, right? So that's what it is. So here he kind of frames himself as, you know what, I'm grown up now. I've been through a lot in my life. So where I'm at as a person and as an artist, yeah, I am levels above you, right? So yes, there are people who still gonna doubt me, who still want me to be on features, right? Who still talking shit behind my back, Dread. But listen, I am levels above all that right now. It's almost like I have wings, even though I am the furthest thing from being an angel, right? So that's what he says in the intro, right? So yeah, just the one gripe that I have with this track is that it just takes a little too long for it to start, but just the sentiment of it all are really, really dug though, right? And yeah, I would say this is the most optimistic song on this album here. 'Cause yeah, everything up to this point and everything else that comes after that is just dark shit, right? So yeah, speaking of which, we have Champion, right, where Mike does some production work for he does that and the next track here, right? But yeah, this is a two-part instrumental, so just similar to the menu from Family Tradition, it's clear that Mike does the second part, right? I like how
Right.
they incorporate this Cutty Rank sample, so it's within that whole Sound Clash champion song kind of mindset. So again, it's going back to that battle mindset, right? That rivalry mindset, right? But yeah, I mean, the first beat is smooth. It's nocturnal. It's produced by Nar. First time I heard about this producer, and Mike does this fantastic rhyme scheme. Well, both of his verses built around a rhyme scheme, but this one in particular really still to me, right? Because it incorporates rhymes that either rhyme or sound similar to Ibble or Ickle, right? So, well, see the last lines that close off this verse, right? Nonsensical. You're complete about views, so what do you do? Make yourself large spectacles. I weak. If the quality poor, then what's the point of numbers? Bad decimals. Used to bump loud records at harsh decibels, but the future is now. I feeling prophetical. I'm needed on every bill. Don't mean congressional. My book keeping me in business. No parts clerical. Like, all right. And then after that, now shit get darker. Cause then that's when you hear the cut your rank sample, right?
Right.
And then Mike's lyrics get significantly vicious because again he going after his rivals, right? I had to quote this. So here we do it here, right? Yeah, stop me. You had a run, but that period about to be done, cause with that pad you appear spotty. I was like, oh okay. That's where we go. Period bars. Oh, that's what we go with, right? But yeah, I heard that I literally had to stop the track. I was like, oh shit, that's where we go. That's where we go, right? But yeah, this is Mike on some viciousness at this point in time, right? And yeah, shit gets even more vicious with what is, in my opinion, the best track here, best song on this album, Mandela Effect, right? That beat though is grimy AF.
Yeah.
It is pure neck snapping boom bap shit that I love. But the icing on the top for me is that KRS-One sample from a song that he did called Mad Crew, right? So if you're
It
familiar
was
with
and
the
he had Sully to come through. Huh?
yeah. I'll get to
Yeah,
Sully,
yeah,
yeah. So when I
yeah,
get, but it's the same sample that Dr. Dre used to keep them heads ringing, right? Is that buck
yeah. Right.
booyaka shot? Like when I heard that, I was like, all right, I know that vibe. I know where you get that. Mike is that
You take
competitive
good,
shit. That's what we get.
you take
Yeah.
good mic. You take good Micwise. You take good Micwise. You'll always have a track. You'll always have a line that'll have me like just like it was the meme Thierry Ori. That meme where you just pursing his lips going back and forward. it great look like you wanna laugh. It's be such a
Oh
clever line
yeah,
that
yeah,
we have
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So like this track have a couple of those, and then I think the previous track or the track before it had the one with Himalayas.
Oh
Um,
no. This one is the one with the Himalaya bar.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was it. It's always have a track. It have a track that'll always have me like just watching watching
oh
the imaginary camera like.
oh no.
that-
Actually, I made a mistake. The Himalaya bar was on gospel. I made a mistake. Yeah, the
Gospel,
Himalaya
right? Okay.
bar is on gospel. Yeah, but that was a great line. That was a great line, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
also one that if you listen deeper, kind of tells you about the type of character that that's being portrayed on that track. But I'll
Right,
leave that up to
exactly.
you all to listen to that, right?
Exactly.
But yeah,
But it's still very clever.
it,
Like
it
it's like
is, it is, right? And I
yeah,
should mention,
yeah.
folks, this is another clinic track, so yes, this is not Mike played himself, but he's played somebody else, but under the guise of somebody else, right? So I
Right.
think, I could be wrong, but I think that this is another kind of subtle political track here, though, because like if
Right, right, right.
Coleman is the P&M track, I think this one is the UNC track because he opens his verse by saying they need someone to restore the feeling with all expedition. That's a job for Sun. Shit is nepotism. Sun,
Right.
rising sun.
Right.
I
Right,
mean,
right, right.
rising sun, right? I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But
Right,
again, it's
maybe.
the
I don't
whole
know.
idea of the rivalry aspect, right? So he's kind of going against his enemies. So it could
Yeah.
be, UNC just going all in on just taking down this PNM government, which they did. They went all in.
Well, I mean, I don't really talk about the election because the election, I kind of know where the election was, but yeah, them just kind of like this business, they half-ass it. No effort.
True. That
Even,
is true.
even,
And
even, even like a bunch of people didn't vote, and then the people, even the guy like by me, like he kind of make an effort, and then the PNM, I forget his name, Paris, I think. Uh, he make almost no effort. So nobody by us even make an effort. Even the guy who won didn't make that big of an effort. Like it's just a no way home kind of situation. It's just like flat.
oh shit,
Everything just basic.
no way home though. Wow. So
You
so
know.
so so theory time, folks. Theory time. This is just me theorizing. Yeah. Why I said that this could be a UNC song, right? Or at
Right.
least still within that whole political rivalry game, right? Is there's the final lines is where he says, "I'm on a rampage with verses, mine heavily spent. My memory ain't like yours. No Mandela effect. Apartheid playing this game, a factor never neglect."
Right. Yeah, yeah,
You
because
know,
like a big part
the
of
racial
like,
aspect of
right,
our
right. I
elections.
know, I know. Yeah, I know. The big part of it is trying to change like kind of history or reframe history kind of thing, so people get into these dumb talking points about like I remember somebody say how Eric Williams wasn't the first prime minister, and it's like you try to, but like when they actually get into the argument, it's like, oh yeah, like it's like that's not really an argument, whatever, normal thing. I mean, but I think the problem with this kind of stuff is that we live in this nonsense attention economy now. So any bullshit somebody could say, they could get a talking point, and the mere existence of a noisy conversation is money. So, and everybody on both sides, so everybody can make thing of others. So it's like it's just to get a rise out of people though.
Yeah,
However,
and
moving on.
and and now to get to Sully's verse, again,
Yeah.
this is kind of just
I, I,
how.
I I was I was fans of these dudes since seeing them in person in when we went in town. And then they came down south and they had a verse, and yeah, Doug Dusty especially, Sully and Doug Dusty. Both of them had these really strong songs. And yeah, Sully was well, he kinda take a big popular party night because he had this track that is a what do you call it? Who got Kendrick Lamar, shit, it's never mind right now.
Oh,
The Big Sean track, Control.
oh, control. Okay, okay.
Yeah, you do a kind of local control track where you just dissing a bunch of local rappers. Not really dissing, but kind of calling them out kind of thing. Now. I was like, alright,
Yeah.
that kind of bring the attention. But then Doug Dusty, they bringing this real smooth, real sick flow. And yeah, they have a lot of songs, strong tracks. They have a song did that is straight up a Menelik sample. They use a Menelik sample, the French rapper, from the 90s, and
Right. Mm-hmm.
Tranquil. Yeah, they basically use the same sample. Basically they sample the song, but like it's one of the hardest structured. But yeah, to see Sully name here is like, alright, this is a real strong feature I expect it to be, and yeah, it's a hard song.
Nah, it was a hard verse though,
Yeah.
and a hard song,
Yeah,
But
and thematically this work, the whole Mandela effect thing, again, as they say, referencing politics, when somebody in power come in, one of the first things, especially somebody in Insidious, particularly Insidious, first thing they'll attack is history. Oh, that's not what happened, this is what happened. That kind of stuff, right? So yeah, this person is the strongest track on the album.
yeah, well, I'm glad to see that we
Yeah,
both on the same boat,
yeah,
right? But here's
yeah,
the thing with Sully though. This is the deceptive. This I use this in positive terms of the album, right? So he is more or less rapping like everything kind of going to shit right now, and I just use music to kind of channel that, right? Like I'm a product of my environment. That's what it is, right? But think about it. It is the whole political angle that I say, right? When it comes to how just if you like dig deep into what's being said here, what Mike says, right, and just thinking about the elections and especially with the one that they had in 2020, right, how they were incorporating, how both parties were bringing in like dancehall and Trinidad artists, right. artists who usually sing about stuff, deal with crime and whatnot, right? Let's be real here, right? But having them do these songs and jingles talking about, hey, vote for this guy, right? So I like
Right.
that Sully's kind of saying, listen, like, I am the type of guy, like, I rapping about what I rapping about, and I have no problem rapping about the things that I rap about because I am from that influences me, right? But
Right.
the irony behind his verse, though it's purposeful, is that he would be the type of person that if he were popular, if his music was all over the radio, he would be the type of person that a political party would have picked and say, yo, I want you to do a song for me,
Right.
promoting my party, getting them to vote for me.
Right. Yeah. Look, it's
That
easy and good money.
that will tell you
Right?
there's layers to this one song. That will tell you, like, it's not just
Yeah.
a bar fest for the sake of it. There's deeper shit going on here. And
No,
again, I don't think I
no, but
get everything, but
the
I think I
problem.
close to. I think that's it.
Yeah, the problem is that everything because of it. Well, we could debate about the nature of AI, but like it's the actual utility of AI. I don't. There's a slight tangent, but again, it point about money now and art. And if AI could do like AI can't do what humans could do in terms of the art stuff particularly well. Most of it is had a kind of copy, and then the stuff it does original is kind of fall flat. But the mere fact that everything is attention economy, what it really affects is that because AI could do all the industrial stuff easy and have no humans, and we have so many people in working conceits of entertainment, people will find themselves in a space just to do entertainment thing. Like I remember when you fell by your place now. Oh gosh, God, I don't want to say the name on TV, but somebody's dad who close to you, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right. And I thought, oh yeah, right, that gonna be an easy bag for you, Matthew. Like I thought you would just sit down and just do the work and then that would be it.
And it
Like that is
wasn't because their party won. That's all I'll say. It was point.
well, not even that. Just because it was leading up towards the thing now. Like that is what I'm trying to say now. Just leading up towards the event, just to hype up, just to have the talk. Like it just seemed to be our whole like economy now is just conversations. If you're talking to somebody, you're making money. That's it. They have no actual work being done anymore in any meaningful sense. Like I get kind of weird, right? Like am I the only one who think it get kind of weird? Other than
That is. It
raw
is.
maintenance, other than raw maintenance of the world, right? Okay, those jobs are always thing. That's fine. Other than that, it don't really seem to have a distinction between anything, between any conversation or operation of the world as opposed to what it shouldn't be. And so, like, I just thinking his statement there is like a really relevant statement because it's like, yeah. This thing gonna start to get weird over time in terms of how we're gonna make money and why. And well, this time taking into account like Middle Eastern countries and all of this weird stuff involving Dubai and like it's starting to get weird. Like it's starting to get real weird. And I don't know what's going on. Like it's stuff like somebody make there's a great video about this called the inverted world. And you say, oh yeah, you can make money by not doing the thing, by failing. That is our whole because everything is just all bets and stock market bullshit and that's how have now starting to have proper down effects from when since the financial crisis happened, whatever it is. But my point is, this track is so relevant in terms of like the whole Mandela effect thing because the mere fact that you have to even argue history with somebody is in itself seem to be part of the economy. Like it's like it can real weird. However, but it's a slight tangent, but
Yeah.
I think it's relevant to the like, oh yeah, this the commentary about how strange you will become in there. As I said, yeah, the internet and well the problem is the internet. If you stay off the internet, it's not that big of a deal. But the internet just kinda amplifying this problem now, right? And it just seemed to be all the internet because if you're on the internet, it's nonsense. Have no like no anything. It had no set of rules now. The rules is just talking and then having arguments, and that's it. Like that's it. Everything is just nonsense. But I like this though. This is again strongest track, really interesting and relevant stuff, and I was digging the hell out of it.
Yeah, and just unapologetically grimy, though, you know what I mean?
You know?
So that leads to the final track, Journeyman, which is the most
Right.
solemn, most somber,
Yes.
and
Great track.
yeah,
Right.
great album close in my opinion, right? But
Yeah.
here is where Mike is at his most personal here. He's playing
Yeah.
himself here.
Yeah.
Even
Very
right now,
self-aware. Very very like in a good sense, and it's not like I insult, but very somewhat humiliating, slightly. Like it's not self-deprecation so much, but like yeah, you just saying it's very real, saying what it is.
yes, exactly, and it's a good thing
Yeah.
that you point that out, right?
Yeah.
So Young Swisher comes through with another beat here, another gospel
Yeah.
influence beat. Again, one that relies on this soulful vocal, right? The hook is, of course, interpolation of the track Blueprint from the album of the same name. That whole Mama
Right.
left me, Pops left
Yeah.
me, wasn't that
Yeah.
wasn't a deadbeat, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
yes, it is true to life, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um,
JC Yama, Mike is a JC fan. We know that.
yep,
So
yep, yep,
yeah,
yeah. But
yeah,
yeah, boy, this is Mike really pouring his heart out here. And just going back to what I mentioned with the political angle and the whole rap battle and the rivalry kind of angle thing, right? So basically, he's there's a lot that goes on here, right? But to put it simply, it's like this, right? He's going back to the whole 10-year run that he's had, right? He's more or less talking
correct,
about here's where I'm at right now. Yes, people rock with me and whatnot, but I have not yet achieved the things that I want to achieve. Going back to
correct,
politics, I have not lived up to the promises that I put on myself and on other people, right? You know, the expectations that he put on himself and other people. I mean, if things were different, his music would have been on radio. You know, he would have actually been making money off of his rap career. He would have actually had a legit
right,
career. Not saying that he doesn't have one, right? But it would have been more
right. But you get, yeah,
profitable
yeah,
to
I get
him.
what you say.
You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like that, right? So he addresses that.
That's very, and he has always for what I like about him is that he's one of those guys who very honest about it. Clearly pick his up attitude in terms of art versus commerce. We know which side he picked, right? The answer is art, but he, understand that it's not an easy pick, right? And that's what I like about it. It's honest in that meta comp. Mike has never been, ironically, a performative person. At least the empty performativity, right? That is what I like about this dude, Judd. Like he does, you get that core honesty, and become meet him in person. I've been working with him. I get it in person. You get to read him in person. He's a real deal now. And this track was so really well reflected that in almost every way.
Yeah, agreed, right? Just to touch on that second verse though, you could just hear the emotion coming out of this guy,
Yeah.
Richard, when he's
Mm-hmm.
rapping. Like you could feel it and you could hear it, boy. You know what I mean? Cause he's doing this rhyme scheme throughout
Yeah.
that verse, right? But then that last line, boy, hit me
Yeah.
so hard, where he says, "Water, water flow, and what might come, few streams." So going
Yeah.
back to everything that I say before here, 10 years in the rap game, 10 years, party running the government, right? All these promises, all these things that could have happened, all these changes that could have happened in our society, and it's either they happen but they were just so small scale, or they just never happened at all, right? So we are all pretty much in the same spot that we were in before. Yes, we had the recent elections, and we hear talk about jobs and whatnot. Okay, all right, but will that really benefit us? Will we
Right.
really see any real development out of this going forward? We don't know. And I've seen this because it's a new party, well, not a new party, well, the rival party here, right? And yet at the same time, it's all this stuff and crime and just how all these things, right, have just influenced the society and the environment that influences Mikewise's work, right? So that's why that last line just has so much power. It's like, yeah, with all that stuff, all these things that I have addressed over the years, right? Even right down to culture part 3, right? All the stuff that I addressed, and yet who's really gonna listen to this?
Right.
I mean, when I put this work out there to the world, what am I gonna benefit from it? Am I gonna make a
Right.
what am I gonna gain from this
Right.
financially, right? Yes,
Right.
artistically you gain a lot, right? But financially, what am I gonna get? That's the power of that too. But then as I wrap up here now, once people really understand what it is I saying here, once people get the vibe and the tone of what it is I got, what I've been seeing throughout this 30 minutes of this album here, will people rock with me? Will people go back and listen to this album, right? What will really come out of this, right? And that's why I love how the album starts off with that quote. You know what I mean? I
Yes.
just making music for me, but at the same time, listen, I don't want you to overthink it. But at the same time, you got to think about what it is I say too at the same time,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
that,
yeah.
that double-edged sword that he plays
Yeah,
throughout
yeah,
this
yeah.
this album. I love that.
Yeah, this is why this dude is work for me so well, because it's that balance now. Like because look, you had to be honest about that. Anything you put out or what you're willing to put out. Like well, this fella just put out his sorry, at Double Toasted did a review of this guy who we talk about Shelby Oaks. What's his name? Chris Tuckman.
Or Chris Stuckman, yeah. Yeah,
Right, they did a
I
review
on
about
the
it. And
subject of that, I've been taking note of the reviews that begin, right? They
right,
admittedly are mixed, but
right.
I would be surprised if some of them will go hard on this man because
Well,
you are a
it's a whole
YouTuber
yeah,
and you
that
turn your back on we blah blah, right? But my
right,
hope
it's a
is
whole weird
my hope is that just tangent here, is that Chris is not gonna take these reviews too harshly. Like case in point,
No, I
Jeremy
mean,
John say some, John Flickinger say some, and them his
he
friends,
put
them
himself.
do the whole YouTube
No,
thing,
no.
right? But
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
I
But
know he's a man who will take from these things and become better. Maybe
right.
you
But
know,
the point I'm making is that it's just the whole you're putting yourself in this space, and look, you had to put yourself on the lash, right? Ultimately, like when it comes to your performance or you being a critic or whatnot, right? That's why somebody who that's the thing with the critic. Like if the critic come in good with an opinion, you have to know what it is you think you're saying with respect to that,
right.
as opposed to your own conceit and what it is you're gonna do going ahead. That's why even like I find Quentin Tarantino, I think he's a great filmmaker, but his criticisms is like kind of terrible. Like him to the wrong on our opinion about a movie. He's like, oh no, you just have a bad take there, and I can call him out on that, even though he's a great filmmaker, have all this history history in the industry and whatnot, right? Stuff like that. And that's what I like about that relationship you have with art. You have to go back and forth on that. Look, that's why I don't really blame anybody for selling out, quote unquote, right? This kind of thing. Because look, you eat our food. We live in that culture. That we live in capitalist hellscape. You had to go, dying on end anytime soon, and you had to do what you had to do. But you had to also be honest about what it is you're doing with respect to art and who gets blamed and whatnot. And I think it's just having control over the narrative. That's why that's why Mandela Effect is so like such a clever track putting it before this now. Because
Yes.
the narrative is what is the only words. What people know and what the truth is as it is, as their own conceit, right? Nobody else have power over that except for you, right? Nobody could people could fake a reality. No captainizing blade, no bullshit could ever fake that nonsense, right? And that's how that had to work. And he had to be honest about that. It's a level of honesty very few people is capable of, right? Because you could say, yeah, you're being real, but that is one layer, right? You have another layer, which is, the price of being real is something you have to being able to weather, and very few people could do that. We had a whole movie about that nailed that aspect of it. We call it one battle after another, right?
That's right.
Sorry, you have to admit that keeping it real will go wrong, like, and it can go wrong. And yeah, that's why I really appreciate this dude material. You'll put it out and you'll give it. It has two layers to the reality. Yeah, that dig down now. So it's that. Yeah, that great. I thought it was a really solid outing.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much as a couple of his other albums, but I put it still there. Like, worth a listen. I give it a walk. I dug it for what it was, and yeah, the man you put yourself is another type of honesty, because let me tell you something. It is not just 6 feet deep. It is go deeper. Like, I admit that, right? So we'll
Right.
we'll
Right.
go
Right.
there.
Yeah.
We'll go there. We'll go there. So yeah. This was a nice solid outing for me. So yeah.
All right, so just to wrap things up, right? Just building off of what it is you say here, right? I would say that this album is, well, even though it's more accessible than Family Tradition, I would say
Right.
it's just as, if not more challenging than that album, in the sense that this is one that requires a lot of thought, right? That's one thing I always loved about Mikewise's work, right? Like on the surface, you could just listen to it and just enjoy the wordplay and the beats and the rhymes and whatnot, right? But there's layers to what it is you're hearing here. It's not just simply just this one thing. There's something else, right? So that's why I feel like the whole clinic tags that he puts on certain tracks here aren't just done for the sake of it. It's done purposefully, right? So again, I wish that there was a Genius page I could go to so I could be like, oh, this is what this song really means, and all that kind of stuff, right? But there's no real like explanation in terms of what the theme of it is, right? I think you just sort
Right.
of go in and you just pick from it where you can, right? But that's why I think that opening quote, perfectly sums up the album, right? Where you can, and this is what will make this album, at least in my opinion, very divisive here, right? You can sit down and listen to it, right? Like you can listen to it casually, you can enjoy it, like you say, you could take a walk with it. It's only like a half hour long, right? So you could just vibe to it, right? But with the more listens that you give it, you realize, oh, this line and these words and this thing that I didn't pick up on. So the more listens that you give it, the more things will become clear, right? So for me, I think that they are clear enough for me to do a review here. But I know that if I were
Right.
to give this more listens, more things will be revealed to me, right? I'm not saying that this is some super complex album, right? But there's stuff that's going on, and I think that it is about parallels, right? It's about comparing his 10-year run in the rap game with the 10-year run of the P&M, right? It's that rivalry between the P&M and the UNC, comparing, just like the viciousness that both parties would throw at each other to, the rap game. And that's why I think that whole Stunner Park thing is no mere coincidence. I honestly think that
Right.
that was one of the inspirations behind this record, right? And then doing this all in a self-referential but kind of slightly self-deprecating way as well, right? In the sense that yes, all these words are being thrown, and that's why I think the whole political stuff, the rap stuff, and even the preacher stuff isn't just mere coincidence. It's all about words. It's all about things that people are saying to get people to rock with you, to believe you, right?
Yeah.
And then when it's time now for you to deliver what it is you deliver now, people don't like it or people are let down, right? So I would say this. I could imagine some people listen to this straightforward through and really rock with it, but then when they actually have to stop and listen to this thing, they're like, I don't think I could listen to this again, but it's too deep, it's too dark. And listen,
Yeah.
music in general could be viewed like that, right? Not every piece of music have to be studied and analyzed, right? You know what I mean? Especially when it came to records that came out before Genius, right? You know what I mean? So a lot of people probably didn't know what certain songs meant until there was like a think piece or video essay or Genius, right? So yes, you
Right.
can listen to the album straightforward, right? But I would not be surprised if there would be people who would realize, but wait now, but I think he's seeing something here, oh gosh, boy, why this album have me thinking so much? No, I don't like this because it make him feel bad because it make him feel, because the tone and yeah. But listen, that's music. That's the power of music. At the end of the day, you can listen to it. You could go in depth if you want to, but just be aware. As long as you're aware that it's more to it than just the music, then fine, right? But that's why I love the framing of the entire record with that one quote. Just basically saying, listen, like, you don't have to know who I am. You don't have to. You don't even have to see me in the flesh, right? But just understand, this music came from the heart. There's a message shit, but I just want you to just listen to it and just enjoy it for what it is, and you pick from it what you pick from it, right? So yeah, I picked a lot from it, right? And just off of it as I say, I know some of this stuff will rub people off the wrong way, whether it's rap rivalries or political rivalries or just rivalry in general. But at the end of the day, what I feel is the overall message is that with all the talk and all the rivalries and all the this and all the dominance and all that kind of stuff, is still that whole idea of promises that weren't kept, that weren't met, right? Just all these expectations that we have of ourselves and of people in authority, right? And then it just sort of winds up like, now we didn't reach it, And yeah, the reason in this case is a societal one. It's just that we are kind of stuck in this third world mind state and this third world mind state that
Yeah.
any sort of change or development had to be a real major one for any set of change to even happen, right? But unfortunately,
Yeah.
that is not the case. And even with COVID, as Mike mentions, on the last song, still no difference. Still no difference has been made, right? And I could honestly say that might, at least, even though I am optimistic in the sense that I hope that it does that isn't the case with UNC now in power. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years now we look back like, yeah, but ain't you promised us this, you promised us that, and we didn't get that. What's going on, right?
Yeah.
But you could see
But
how
it's not looking bad already for them. Like the kind of decisions they're making is like,
yeah,
right,
and
put it in a bad place already.
yeah, and just to wrap things up now, and it would have been easy for Mike to just do a political album, but I don't think that it would be right for him to just dedicate a whole album just talking shit about politics.
No, but
right?
you don't need to do a whole political album. Like, not a thing. Like that don't mean anything. It's political by its own conceit. That's how
I
I
would
just kind
agree,
of look
yeah.
at it. Like,
And I would make the
yeah.
argument that there is a political undertone in throughout the entirety of this record. So even in songs where PNM and UNC aren't called out, or certain people in power, whether it's in politics itself or ministries and whatnot, or even religion and all too, aren't called out in person, you could tell that there is that undertone, especially when it comes to the narratives that are woven into this album here, right? But what I really love the most about this, though, is that it's not just about them. It would have been easy to just talk about society as a whole, right? But even on family tradition, even on Hate Succeed, it was never about the society as a whole. It's about him.
Right.
It's about the people. It's about how they are affected by that society. And yeah, they are never shown as angelic, you know what I mean? They are shown as flawed individuals, and Mike always shows himself as flawed, right? Not saying that he's a terrible person, but just like, look, I've tried, and I think like I've reached a level that, you know, I didn't expect to reach over the past 10 years, but still, I still feel unfulfilled. And I feel that too. I feel like, you know, just with, you know, like where we all could be as creatives now. I mean, like you would think
Yeah.
that things would have been better for all of us, and yet we still stuck in the same, you know, barrel of crabs, if you will, right? So that's kind of like the tragedy, of, you know, kind of connecting all these songs together, right? But yeah, take a talk long enough about this, right? But yeah, while I did not love this as much as Family Tradition and See Hit 68, that's not to say that this is not that's not to say that this isn't an enjoyable record. That's not to say that this isn't a brilliant record, because it is. It is enjoyable just from a straightforward listen. And it is a brilliant listen in terms of just all the nuggets, all the jewels, though, just all the stuff that is going on, right? Even the stuff that I didn't even pick up on, right? And that's kind of the beauty of music, though. That's what kind of adds the longevity of certain, you know, forms of music, right? You know, it may mean something to you now, but with more listens and as you grow up, it may mean something else to you later on, right? And it just adds to your life experience and whatnot, right? So yeah, I see nothing but longevity with this record here, but I already know just off the depth and density in this album alone, I know it wouldn't be for some people. And I mean, for Micwise, I know that I think that he's cool with that. He's cool with that. He's fine with that. That's why his music is the way he is, and yeah, that's why he always had to be, you know, fighting for his art, right? Because people just not gonna get, you know what I mean? And that's just how it is,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, for me, rating wise, decent to strong 4 out of 5. Definitely one of the year's best. I mean, no surprise by now. I mean, this guy's work is just so incredibly consistent, man. You know what I mean? So for me to say that this isn't top 10 is just me lying to myself, right? But yeah, this is one of the best albums I've heard all year. But this is a challenging one for sure. But this is one that I will say, just to wrap things up, will reward you with more and more listens, right? Because yeah, even with all that long stuff that I gave you and all these theories and perception that I picked up from it, I feel like there's probably more in this record that I didn't even pick up on, right? Or maybe I am overthinking it, right? But then again, that's just the power of music. So there you go. But yeah, Ricardo, I guess I could give you a rating and then final thoughts.
Yeah, right. Rating, yeah, like a 8 out of 10. Like it probably, you know, closer to a 7, to be honest. About it in terms of thing. It didn't stick with me as like say something like his other albums, but it did. It's like yeah, it's surprisingly deep and honest and really well, just generally well thought out and like yeah, this the to me this is the natural evolution of him as an artist. Going with respect to that, especially those last 2 tracks that really set up some interesting conceits as to where this will go and how you're supposed to think about it. Yeah, it's solid stuff. Yeah, really dug.